Hello and welcome to Life Talk. I'm Mark Crutcher, president of Life Dynamics, and I'm joined as always by my trusty sidekick, Renee Hobbs. Hello, Renee.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good.
And sitting nearby, of course, lurking nearby.
Lurking
nearby, as always, is the always charming Destiny Herndon de la Rosa. So,
That was a roller coaster of an introduction there.
Right.
That ended with a compliment.
right.
Thank you.
All right. You know, one of the things that we see kind of repeating itself in the news over and over again are these stories where the pro-aborts are trying to create mind control. It's not about so much that they want you to do certain things, but they want you to do it for the right reasons. They want you to do it for the reasons that they want you to do it. For example, we've got this situation. Planned Parenthood in Washington State is joining the state in a suit against a string of Christian-owned pharmacies called Stormans because they are saying they're not going to sell birth control drugs that might be actually abortifacient, which all birth control drugs have that potential. Planned Parenthood went out and they started calling around the state to see if women would be denied any access to this drug. And the interesting thing about this is that within 5 miles of this drugstore, 30 other people sold the abortifacient drugs. So in other words, there was no argument that women were going to be denied this drug if they wanted to buy it. And an attorney up there pointed out, said it's perfectly legal for a pharmacy to say that we're not going to stock these drugs because we think it's unprofitable, or we want to specialize in geriatric drugs, or we don't want to stock the drug, or even if you run out, that's fine too. If they don't want to do it for one of those reasons, it's okay. But they can't say that they're not going to stock it because they have moral objections to it. And so in other words, it's what they're thinking that the pro-aborts in the state are so upset about. It's what they think.
Well, it blows my mind that they can say that something's denied just because they are not offering it.
Right.
If you want it offered, go start your own pharmacy. But to say that someone's denying something, and you know, I think if we applied this to anything else, like here in Dr. Pepper, or here in Texas, everybody loves Dr. Pepper, and you go to certain places and they only have Coke, like I would never be like, you're denying me access.
Right.
No, I could go buy it somewhere else. I could bring it to your establishment. I mean, I have access to something that's completely different than them saying, we only carry this brand or whatever this is. And you're exactly right. They found one thing that they can cling on to because it's a moral objection rather than just we prefer
Not to sell it.
not to sell that because maybe we don't have a lot of patients who need it or whatever it is. It's your own business. It's a free market. That's the way this country works.
Well, or what if you said our profit structure, this thing doesn't fit our profit structure. We don't sell enough of it. Like you said, there's not enough demand for it, or we just don't want to sell it. It's just outside the purview of what the things we want to sell. That's fine. You don't have to sell it. But if you say I'm doing it because I'm morally opposed to it, now you're going.
That's where tolerance ends, and
Right.
we are going to crush you in your business.
And you know, another example of the same thing, especially by the way, if you can show that within 5 mile radius of this place that's not going to sell it, 30 other places do sell it.
Right.
So how is a woman denied anything?
She's not.
She's not. Another thing of this thought control that they're trying to push, we have a case headed toward the Supreme Court, the Little Sisters of the Poor, this charity Catholic organization that takes care of elderly people. That's their mission. They take care of elderly, indigent people. Sometimes they're homeless, sometimes they're not, but whatever. That's their mission. They're going to force them to cover birth control in their health care for these nuns. These are nuns. They're going to force them to buy birth control pills and abortifacient drugs and to make them available to all the other nuns. Neither their staff nor their clientele have any use for this.
Can we force the Satanic Temple to open up an adoption agency? I mean, if we have to make everybody do everything that we feel like doing.
For the same reason.
For the same reason, and they
Right.
have to feel. I want those Satanists to feel really good about adopting out babies and
Right.
taking pro-life stances on stuff. It's just what happened to independent thought. And you're exactly right. It's not even a matter of we want you to do this to abide by some law. It's we want you to believe in it. You have to be on our team because we're right, and
Right.
they're so wrong.
Another one that, you know, now we've talked here before about this situation in California with the crisis pregnancy centers being forced to give out abortion information to anybody that comes in there. Now, a certain number of women that go to crisis pregnancy centers have absolutely no interest in abortion.
Right.
right? They go in there to get the pregnancy test. If they're pregnant, they want help with the baby or help with finances or whatever it might be, or a car seat or whatever it might be. But the crisis pregnancy centers are going to be forced to give her information about abortion and to post signs on the walls talking about abortion. Again, this is all thought control. And we see this across the board with what I call the godless left. And it's not just on abortion, it's on a whole range of issues. As we said, it's not simply a matter that they want these services provided or this argument made or whatever that is. You've got to do it for the reason that they want you to.
You know, Mark, the one thing that I've learned since I've been here at Life Dynamics is no one is more intolerant of other people's views than the abortion lobby, those people that support legalized abortion.
I think that if it does come down to the point where we are being forced to tell women about abortion alternative, or abortion access, then I think it's something where we have to honestly give them all of the information beyond that point. Not just here's the abortion clinic, but here's the number of women who have had botched abortions here. Here are the women who have been killed or neglected here.
They're never going to.
Well, no, but I'm saying if a pregnancy center has to do that, give them all the information. Don't just stop with there's an abortion clinic down the road. Let them know that they've failed all of these different, health department regulations.
Yep, that's right. Charlotte, North Carolina. A little baby, let me see if I can pronounce this, Elia Faith Pegues, Pegues, was born at 10 ounces and 10 inches long. And she was born at 5 months into the pregnancy, which you can go on into any yellow pages, or you can go online and find abortion clinics all over this country who will do abortions at this point without any reason. You just walk in and say, I want an abortion, I'm 5 months pregnant, they'll do it. If you have the money, of course. The doctor says that the baby is going to live, it's going to thrive, it's going to play and be as happy as a normal, healthy, normal kid, and will likely go home in a few weeks. But the reason I want to bring this up is we've seen other babies born at very small sizes and very early in the pregnancy. This just destroys any argument that the pro-aborts have about viability being the point at which abortion should be. You'll hear some people say, oh, I'm pro-life after viability. Okay, when is that? And viability is a function, as this doctor said. The doctor told a local television station that the reason this child survived was because of advances in ventilator care and IV nutrition, helping more premature babies to survive. And so in other words, the issue of viability is a function of medical technology. It has nothing to do with the baby. Babies are routinely surviving today that would have died 100 years ago. 100% of them would have died 100 years ago at these early ages. And yet the babies haven't changed. It's the technology that's changed. And so this issue of viability is a complete moot point. It has nothing to do with whether an unborn child is a living human being or not. And I will still contend that viability occurs at the moment of fertilization, because if that were not true, in vitro fertilization would not be possible. They take the baby and they do in vitro fertilization outside the womb. It's not attached to the mother in any way. And that baby is then implanted into the womb only because we have not yet developed the technology to allow it to grow outside the womb. But one day that's very likely to happen. So then you will have proof that viability occurs at the moment of fertilization. And we have it right now. We have that proof right now. But of course the pro-aborts don't want to talk about that. I don't know, did y'all have the same reaction that I did when you watched our liar-in-chief, Obama, doing his little tearful thing about all the shootings and calling for gun control and all this stuff? This man is a complete phony. You're not going to tell me that somebody whose heart is as hard as his is about life issues is going to go up there and start crying on national television over these babies, these children that were shot in this place. If almost anybody else had done this, I could have almost seen it. But this was the phoniest bunch of garbage I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, and the first time, I guess, in 7 years that he's ever cried on camera.
Yeah.
Did anything like that. Yeah.
And it was contrived. It was clearly contrived.
Right.
And Alveda King is one of our friends here, and we love her to death, and she's a good lady. And she wrote a letter to Obama and asked him if he could just, in this speech, Obama said, quote, if there's even one thing we can do, if there's just one life we can save, we've got an obligation to try, unquote. And she's saying, well, why don't you apply that to the unborn? We can save those lives. You have the power to help save those lives. You won't do it. 9 million babies have been killed under his watch. And she says, quote, death by forceps or bullets is death all the same. It's the same deal. Now, I think that as much as I love Alveda, I think she's a little naive here to think that, and I mean, she probably doesn't think that Obama's either going to read this or do anything about it, because he's not. She knows that. But she says, quote, I invite you to step into the arena of principles and moral values, the arena where we can change the world through love and peace, unquote.
She's just calling for consistency, and that's what we're seeing such a lack of.
But you're not going to get it out of this guy.
Yeah.
And, you know, the fact is, she's calling him to step into the world of morals and principles. He has no morals. He has no principles. You can't expect this. He's not going to change his stripes. He's not going to change his spots. This is who this man is.
I think he has a lot of pressure. Obviously, he's in bed with Planned Parenthood. He has so much pressure on him to conform to that belief. And maybe this is where I'm naive too. I don't think anybody's beyond change or redemption. And I think even he can see it. And maybe this is the way that, you know, like the campaign y'all had where you showed all of the little beads that this is the number of people who died in war, and then this is the number that died in abortion. Like, I think it's a matter of reaching people, and not just Obama, but people like him who have a problem with children being shot. That is this little, you know, glowing ember of their humanity. Like, they have a problem with children dying. So let's now expand on that and take it to the womb. Like, let's change the dialogue and say, how can you be so inconsistent? Because I don't think anybody wants to be called inconsistent these days. You know, how can you be so inconsistent and say that you care about this child's life, but you don't value the life of the unborn?
You know, Mark, it took me a while to understand this, to grasp the concept, but a politician that supports legalized abortion is not morally qualified to serve in office.
And obviously, there's always the angle of the African American community, which I was recently on a very pro-choice feminist page and had made the comment that, you know, the African American community is targeted so much more than the white community. And this is, you know, the government's way of saying, here, we don't want to help subsidize your community or help with any type of poverty alleviation. Just go kill your kids. That's the solution we've given them. I was shocked at the number of pro-choice feminists who were like, wow, I had never thought of it that way, because I reached them on one issue that they really care about, which is civil rights and poverty alleviation. And I feel like abortion does transcend all of these issues, because it's a human rights issue.
Those people might have morals and principles. This man does not. This is like trying to reach Adolf Hitler during the Holocaust by talking to him about the immorality of what he's doing and the inconsistency of what he's doing.
But don't you still wish somebody would have reached Hitler? I mean, I don't think that means we just give up and...
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I think it's naive to believe this is going to happen.
I think it's going to have to be totally a God transformation. It's going to have to probably come through prayer.
The reason I say this is, every time one of these things happens, he uses this for his political advantage.
Right.
He's trying to push gun control. Well, I got a news flash for him. Islamic terrorists don't buy their guns at gun shows. You know, he's saying we got to close a gun show loophole. I guarantee you, Islamic terrorists do not buy their guns at gun shows. So that's not going to help us any. But anyway, one person I think we can say does have some moral principles. Did y'all see where Congressman Steve King from Iowa walked out of the State of the Union address? Did y'all see that? Mm-mm. Pretty cool. Of course, all congressmen have a seat and a seat for a visitor at the State of the Union address.
Was he the one who left his empty?
He left his seat and his guest seat empty and walked out. And he went to the congressional prayer room and he prayed for God to raise up a leader who he will use to restore the soul of America. Obama had left an empty seat next to his wife to commemorate the victims of gun violence who no longer have a voice. Well, who has less of a voice than the unborn?
Right.
And that's what Steve King was saying. He said, quote, the chorus of voices that have never been heard in this world but are heard beautifully and clearly in the next world. And he made the point, too, about the tears thing. He said, this is the first time we've seen in 7 years this guy shed any tears. And he said, I cannot abide sitting in there and being lectured one more time by this guy. Mm-hmm. That's a guy with principles and morals. And even if he was wrong on an issue, he's got the potential to be reached because he does have some principles and morals. He may be wrong on something, but you can reach him. That's where I say he's different than Obama.
Well, I mean, abortion's obviously, it's the litmus test for someone's humanity.
Right.
If you can believe that a person is a person at the very beginning of their life, then you can have that consistency. But you can believe wonderful rainbows and kitten kisses about everything else in the world. But if you think it's okay to kill babies, there's something at your foundation that is corrupt and wrong.
Well, that's what I've said on here a million times. It's a mental disease.
That must be where I get it. Am I learning from you?
Yeah.
Is it actually starting
Well,
to
it would do you well
get
to
through my
learn
thick
from it.
skull? All right.
All right, that would do you well, right, Renee?
That's right.
That's right. I got a really neat, talking about consistency, I want to talk about here in a minute, neat story. But before we do, you know, we're in the campaign season, obviously, it keeps heating up. And of course, all the people who are running as Republicans in the Republican primary claim to be pro-life. Of course, we've been sold down the river by these people over the last 45 years many, many times. But, you know, I think one thing that's important, and this kind of got brought up by the New York Times here not long ago in kind of a circuitous way. I'd want to know, if I were going to vote for one of these guys, what's their spouse's position on abortion? Because look, we went through Ronald Reagan. When Ronald Reagan became president, claiming to be so pro-life and wrote a book calling the pro-life movement the conscience of a nation. When he took over, it was legal to abort every baby conceived in America. 8 years later, when he left, it was legal to abort every baby conceived in America. There was a lot of rhetoric and a lot of arm flapping and hand wringing, but not much was done. And Nancy Reagan is a raging pro-abort. You're not going to tell me that didn't have an influence there. When George Bush took over, it was legal, both George Bushes, and both times it was legal to abort every baby conceived in America. And when they left office after what was 12 years of the two of them, it was still legal to abort every baby in America. And both of their wives are raging pro-aborts. And you're not going to tell me that doesn't have some impact on what they do and how they behave. So I think it's important that we, as we look at these candidates, want to know what their wives' positions are, what our husbands, if in the case of Fiorina. And there was an article in the New York Times, and they were kind of using it as a slam, but I think it's something important for us to understand. They were talking about Marco Rubio's wife, Jeanette, and apparently she's the most pro-life of the two of them, and she holds his feet to the fire, and they're saying, everybody that knows both of them says that her staunchly pro-life position has pushed him further than he used to be, even on the pro-life issue. Gary Bauer wrote in The Federalist that Ted Cruz's wife has the same effect on him. And I don't know about all the others. I know, speaking of Carly Fiorina, her husband Frank, his mother was told to abort him. I don't know what the reasons for, whether it was a health issue or whatever, but his mother was encouraged strongly to abort him and didn't. And he talks about that story all the time. So I think it's important, if we're going to listen to these people, what is their spouse's position? We always have this view of, well, what does it matter what their spouse believes about anything? You know, they're not the ones we're electing. But it is important. I want to talk now in our kind of philosophical discussion that we have every show. You know, one of the things that I talk about in Siege, my new book, and that we're going to talk about in this new training that we're doing, and the Intel training, by the way, is really taken off. We've already sold out the first one and almost the second one. So it's obviously something that people are really wanting, is this Intel training we talked about the last couple of shows. One thing I'm going to talk about in that training and I talk about in Siege, is that we've got to do a better job of forcing the enemy to defend the parameters, the extremes. They're good at forcing us to do that. For example, the best example I can give you on that is rape, abortions for rape. Even their own statistics show it almost never happens. Sometimes they've even put out some statistics that show it happens less than 1% of all abortions are done on women who are pregnant through rape. So it's something that almost never occurs, never. But anytime you get into a debate with these people about abortion, they're going to bring up rape and make it appear like that 90% of all the abortions are done on women who are victims of rape.
And that's one of the easiest ones, I think, for us to combat, because rapists love abortion.
Absolutely.
And I think it can really be that simple. Rapists love abortion. Predators love abortion. It allows them to keep victimizing women. And so when you have groups like Stop Patriarchy is a big one, who they have these huge signs that they bring out talking all about we need abortion on demand because of rape. I think that is just, it makes me my blood boil every time, because I'm like, that's the exact reason that we don't need it. If you have something in common with a rapist, which is that you both really love abortion on demand,
Right.
full access, something's wrong. We should never have something in common with a rapist.
Well, we proved that with our child predator project.
Absolutely.
And you go to our child predator website, these men are rapists. When you've got a 30, 40, 50-year-old man out here having sex with a 6 or 7 and 8-year-old, 10-year-old girl, and does it for years and years and gets her pregnant and takes her for 3 or 4 abortions and nobody says anything, you tell me that guy's not the biggest proponent of legalized abortion in the world?
Yep.
That's who that is. All right, but here's the thing we want to push them out to the extreme on, out to the edge on, to show how extreme they are. And I'll ask you, should women be allowed to have abortions if they got pregnant on purpose? They're always saying this is about unintended pregnancies and women, birth control fails, or they do this, or this happens over here, rape, whatever it might be. But what about a woman who gets pregnant on purpose?
And then changes their mind.
Well, there can be a lot of reasons. Years ago, and I've got a tape of it here somewhere, Oprah Winfrey did a show on, it was about teenage love, and it was back when she was doing the talk show format, and teenage pregnancy and high school romances and all this. And one of the girls that she had on the show had had an abortion. And Oprah got to talking to her about it, and she said, how'd that come about? Well, I was dating this guy, and I wanted him to marry me, and he wouldn't marry me. And I thought if I got pregnant, he'd marry me. So unknown to him, I quit taking my birth control, and I got pregnant, and then he wouldn't marry me anyway. So I had an abortion. So she got pregnant on purpose to trap a guy into marrying her. We need to make the abortion industry defend that abortion. We also saw a few years ago a situation with the Olympics. They have this anti-doping, anti-drug policy in the Olympics. If you take any kind of drugs, you're out. You can't compete. It was discovered, I think the Russians were actually the ones who, they did it. I don't know if they're the ones who made the actual medical discovery. But that when people have more oxygen in their blood, they perform better athletically. And women have more oxygen in their blood when they're pregnant.
So women were getting pregnant and then aborting after
And
the Olympics.
they caught the Russians actually doing this. That women were getting pregnant, and the coaches were impregnating these girls, these women in athletic competition, getting pregnant, competing, and as soon as the competition was over, they'd have abortions. Should they be allowed to do that?
So the crazy thing is that the pro boards definitely think that they should, and that's why they got so mad when Wendy Davis came out a few years ago and talked about her abortions and then gave justifications for why she had them. And I can't remember what they were now, but one was like a abnormality or an anomaly, and then she had some other reason for the other one. And they said, stop doing that. You don't have to justify it. It should be, it was
okay,
sunny
fine.
and it was a Wednesday and I chose to have an abortion.
Then justify these. And what about, and we've had them here, quite a few of them here called women who had abortions, and they were worried that the abortion made them sterile, and they went out and intentionally got pregnant again,
just to test
just to prove that they could have that they could get pregnant again. Should she be allowed to have an abortion?
These people, so many of them, and I would say, and we disagree on this, you think all pro-choice people are mentally ill. I think a vast majority of pro-choice people are the kind who say, well, I wouldn't personally have an abortion, but I'm not going to tell another woman what to do. I think that that's most pro-choice people that I know. Now, I think there's an extreme population that absolutely say, they're the ones who, what do they call them, ZEFs, zygotes, embryos, and fetuses. And so they're like, ZEFs have no right to human life and they shouldn't, and blah, blah, blah. And those are the ones who, to me, it's like they talk about it like, slave owners and Nazis talked about. They do not even give any humanity to the unborn whatsoever. Those people are the ones saying, hey, we should be able to do this. It's the woman down in Austin with the shaved head. Her picture was everywhere, remember? And she said, your chicken dinner can feel pain too, yo, or whatever her sign said. That's what they believe. Like,
okay, but what I'm saying is,
we're all on the same level as animals.
The people that are watching this debate, we need to force the enemy
to come out, the extremists
to come out and
defend it.
We had a story on here not long ago about a woman named Josie Cunningham, and this happened to be from England, but we've seen the same situation here. She was up for a role on a show over there, a reality show called Big Brother, remember? And we talked about her. She thought she wouldn't get that role if she was pregnant. And she was real cavalier about it. She said, hey, a year from now, I won't be breastfeeding a baby. I'll be on Big Brother.
And that pushes those people who are on the fence to our side for sure.
That's
and
what I'm saying.
Like, I think, yes, let's show the extremists, which is what the People of Choice website does. It shows the extremists that say your baby's the same as a chicken dinner. I mean, it shows the people who truly believe this. And again, kind of like we don't ever want to have anything in common with rapists. I think most people don't want to have anything in common with these complete fanatics who believe abortion on demand, all access.
We had a situation back in 1991 with Sinead O'Connor when we talked about it here on Live Talk at that time, or not too long after that. She was trying to get pregnant. She was engaged to this guy. They were wanting to have a baby. She got pregnant. She was thrilled about it. He was thrilled about it. But she started having morning sickness, and their relationship wasn't too good, so she had an abortion.
Sinead O'Connor?
Sinead O'Connor. And she wrote, I found the quote, she wrote a song called My Special Child just a few weeks after she had this abortion. And she tried to portray herself as a victim. She says, quote, I think people don't necessarily understand because they haven't had the experience that to decide to terminate a pregnancy is the most difficult decision a woman will have to make. Well, she didn't have to make it.
Right.
She didn't have to make it. She chose to make it. And she wrote this song called My Special Child, which was described as a gentle, mournful ballad, lullaby with acoustic guitar and an Irish chamber orchestra 2 weeks after she had her abortion. And she said, quote, it was a planned pregnancy, which I was very happy about. I was completely in love with the father. But things didn't work out between us, and we were both unhappy. It was almost too much for us to handle. He was young, 26. Well, that's not too young. And I was on tour and was feeling ill all the time because I was pregnant, and I was feeling so awful. I made the decision it would be better off for everybody if I had the abortion. No, it'd be better off for me if I had the abortion. It
What
wasn't
if
better off.
someone like Andrea Yates wrote a poem to her 5 children that she drowned? I
Right.
mean, I think it's that concept that, again, we're not viewing the unborn as fully human because someone can think that that is compassionate, but after the child's born, if you murdered it, it would suddenly be wrong.
Right.
What magically happens that makes that a human being?
Right. It's that magical trip down the birth canal and the little. I don't know. I don't know how you even describe this.
Wait a second, though. I think that we need to make the point that the pro-life position is that there's never a legitimate reason to support abortion.
You're absolutely right, Renee. But the point I'm trying to make here is that we've got to do a better job of forcing these people to defend the extremes. And they're going to say, oh, these things almost never happen. They're very rare. Add them all up, and I'll bet you they happen more often than women having abortions who've been raped, if you add them all up. So if you want to talk about that, if you want to force us to quote to the extreme of saying a woman can't have an abortion even if she's been raped, then you tell me what's wrong with this. You tell me what's wrong. Why do these women lose their right to choose, right? Why does the woman who says, I was trying to trap this guy and I got pregnant, quit taking my birth control and tried to trap him into marrying me, and when he didn't marry me, why should she lose her right to choose? Why should these athletes who say, well, like, it's my body, if I want to get pregnant so I have more oxygen in my body so I can perform better and then have an abortion after the thing is over, why do I lose that right? Why isn't my reason for having an abortion just as good as yours? And if we can force people to defend the flanks, so to speak, of their position, we can show people how wretched the whole position is. Because to a person that thinks rationally, they're going to say, if you're going to say that this woman can have an abortion, it's her choice to have an abortion, then why isn't it this woman's choice to have it too? You got to have some, like we were talking about before, you got to have some consistency, and I think the average person sees that. Anyway, boy, time flies on this new format show, but anyway, great show, guys, thanks. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have. You can get daily news updates by logging on to prolifeamerica.com. In the meantime, remember, Life Dynamics is not here to put up a good fight. We're here to win, because winning is how the killing stops.